Hello, folks. Hello. Welcome to the weekly spinner rack on the newly rebranded Comic Tropes After Dark. Dressed up a little for the rebranding. But I used to call this channel Pros and Cons, and I personally thought that was a really clever, cool title. But you know what? In a way, it just stopped making sense because the channel everybody knows me for is Comic Tropes. And if I'm going to have a second channel that's also about comics, I should have some synergy there. That's what the businessmen call it. So I am now calling it Comic Tropes After Dark. But this show is the weekly spinner rack still. And that's where you and I, you the audience, me the host, we are going to look at the latest comics that came out this week. Lots of different interesting stuff to talk about. All sorts of comics, really. Look at all of these. That'll be fun. We're going to have a guest in the middle of the show. Not right up front. We're going to have a guest in the middle of the show. Writer Jeff Parker is going to stop by to talk about Zootopia. Maybe we'll ask him some other questions. He's been an artist and an animator, so he's had an interesting career. I think it'll be a lot of fun. But let me drop some hellos to the folks in the chat room real quick, and we'll go from there. Yes, the pros outweighed the cons. Exactly right. Lovely to see everybody. We are going to have a good time tonight. I promise. This is going to be a good one. What else? Hello, Circuitron and Out of Voida and Owen's Reviews. Hello to all of you wonderful people. Fancy new name. Not even quite a suit. I didn't put on a jacket. I was like, it's going to be pretty hot if I put on a jacket on top of this. But, I just thought I'd dress up a little. It doesn't always have to be T-shirts and hoodies, right? But I hope that the new name makes sense. It's the same links and everything. Nothing really changes there. Thank you very much for the compliment on the tie. I never read that one. I'd be curious to check it out now. But why don't we just start by getting right into the news of the week? Because there's plenty of it. We're saying some hellos and some goodbyes. There's a mix of news tonight. Yeah, that's about as high as I get is high-end waiter. That's the comment I was looking for. So what do we got here for news, aside from an amazing thumbnail? Daniel Craig is Sergeant Rock? I could possibly see that working. Let's get into that. So this comes from Deadline. Trusted Hollywood insider source. Not really insider even. It's just a trade publication. And they reported, they were the first to report, that Daniel Craig is currently in talks to play DC's World War II hero. Not a superhero. This was back when DC and a bunch of other publishers were still doing war as a genre, war comics. Sergeant Rock. And it would be in a movie directed by Luca Guadagnino. I'm guessing at the pronunciation there. I'm sorry. I guess Daniel Craig is currently in his upcoming movie called Queer. And so we'll see what comes of this. But they do have a writer attached, the guy that wrote Challengers, Justin Kurtitskis. I don't know. Why do they make me say names? Why? There's no confirmation officially from DC Studios yet. So I think that they're probably going to wait until things are locked in. So as in, Daniel Craig seems to be in serious discussions, but no contracts have been signed. If that happens, which Deadline seems to feel pretty confident about, we'll see what happens from there. Daniel Craig was in a World War II movie. What was it called? I think it was called Defiance. But he's a good actor. I could see somebody like him working as Sergeant Rock. I think that the mainstream comic public doesn't necessarily know Sergeant Rock that well anymore. But Sergeant Rock had a long, long run. Konnichiwa, well, I don't know. By our time, you'd be saying konbanwa. And let's see, if it's 17 hours ahead, Yeah, Konnichiwa makes sense. I didn't know if it was time for Ohio, but yes. West Coast Avengers having fun out there in Japan. I hope you're having a great time, Dave. I have tickets to fly to Japan in January, but there's a chance I may cancel that at this point. Oh, it's 10:05 a.m. Okay, I wasn't doing the math right. Then it's before noon, so you'd still be saying like "Ohayou gozaimasu." Konnichiwa works. Yeah, let me think for a second. So I'm not going to get too into personal stuff here. It's not really my place to say, but Chrissy isn't feeling well, and so she's not going to go, and I don't know if I want to go by myself. So we'll see. My Chemical Romance cosplay, huh? Thank you for the super chat, first of all. Did Gerard Way wear a bunch of black shirts and red ties? If he did, I'll be honest, I didn't know that, guys. But I guess that fits. I remember a few years ago, right, Arnold Schwarzenegger had been in the running to play Sergeant Rock. At one point, Bruce Willis was. We'll see. We'll see what happens. If you haven't read it, though, the character debuted all the way back in 1959. Keep in mind, at that point, World War II is still pretty fresh in people's minds. You know, you're only a decade and a half removed from the end of it, so that's pretty fresh in people's minds. And yeah, kind of cool character, created by writer Robert Kanigher and artist Joe Kubert. I'd love to do an episode on Joe Kubert, and specifically Joe Kubert on Sergeant Rock. I would love to do a breakdown of that. Garth Ennis could probably write a very good Sergeant Rock story, no question. Yeah. There was a bit of that feeling. Yeah. Korean War era, no question. Yes, we were still at war. Yeah. Does he have any notable stories? I think that there are lots of stories that people could point to and call their favorites. It wasn't really a serialized comic at that point, so it was mostly every issue would feature either something unique about Sergeant Rock and his personality, somebody interesting from his platoon, Easy Company, or maybe some sort of really unique Nazi enemy, something like that. So it was more just like he'd come up with a cool story, get in, get out. It wasn't like ongoing epics where I could say this was his best story. But there's some cool stuff like team-ups with Batman in The Brave and the Bold. Issue 200, I remember being good. I'm trying to remember if the losers came from Sergeant Rock or not. Like, DC has a bunch of World War II characters. Because they've got, like, also, they acquired Blackhawks. There's the losers that were originally World War II. There's Sergeant Rock. I'm trying to remember. Was Haunted Tank also World War II? But they had a couple war comics. Anyway. So I'd have to give some serious thought to go, like, here's the Sergeant Rock issue I'd recommend as a starting point. Like I say, I'd need to sort of do a little more research, freshen up my memories, and maybe make a whole episode about it. Thank you. Yeah, Bruce Campbell, I was reviewing his Sergeant Rock versus Zombies, basically, comic from earlier this year, and I gotta say, Bruce Campbell did a great job writing. No co-writer. He just wrote a great comic. It helped that Eduardo Risso was the artist, and he did a really good job. I think that Sergeant Rock, and specifically making it a World War II movie, kind of frees you up to do use some of the unique characters that they had, but not feel overly obligated to tie it into all the superhero stuff. Yeah, it would be something a little bit different for a comic book movie right now. Haunted Tank was World War II. Okay, I thought so, but I couldn't quite remember. As long as I'm on DC stuff, I wanted to mention DC claims Absolute Batman is the best-selling book this year, best-selling comic book. So it was all the way last Monday now. probably while I was doing the show last week, but DC posted this press release on their site. Yeah, we talked about it a bunch on this show as it was coming out, but yeah, he did a 6-issue, I think it was 6-issue storyline on Sergeant Rock this past year. It was really good. Okay, so DC said, as absolute Batman #1 from creators Scott Snyder, Nick Dragotta, Frank Martin, and Clayton Cowles tops the charts at retail after a successful launch and multiple additional printings, the new DC comic book series is undisputably the best-selling comic of 2024. Is it? Sort of. Sort of. It's a good comic, and it certainly sold a lot. So if we include the second and third printings, we get up to somewhere in the vicinity. They haven't reported the exact numbers, but we know that it should be right around 400,000 copies. Big numbers. Definitely big numbers. In any era. You know, you've got like certain outlier eras where comics were selling really well, but 400,000 has always been strong. Always. But I wanted to put in this note, which other people reporting on this news have talked about too. You have to exclude the kids' comics. And I think that those are comics. So you can't count stuff like this year, Dogman and the Scarlet Shredder was the new Del Pilkey comic. And that's sold over 1 million copies already this year. So just saying, you know, like, it's undisputably the best-selling comic. Well, if we're talking about, you know, monthly American comics, yeah. If we're ignoring manga and young adult comics, no, we can't quite go there, but it's really, really good. I just would have added a little nuance if I was doing the press release, but I get it. It's marketing, and it is still an impressive number. It's really good right now. I think Nick's doing some great stuff, and I am in the process of doing an episode for Comic Tropes. I'm writing it basically right now. I haven't recorded it yet, although I've got 2 that I'm editing. So you will get regular Comic Tropes episodes. I'm doing one on Nick Dragotta and Jonathan Hickman's East of West. I think that's a really underrated comic, somewhat early for both of them. Really good. So, oh yeah, Dogman is like sells a lot, and that's a comic book. You know, I mean, you can't just say like it's a kid's book or it's a comic book. So yeah, I think it's cool that sells so well, because at a certain point, you know, like a kid that absolutely loves that is going to grow up and look for something, a similar experience, and that's when they're going to discover the kind of stuff that we generally read every day, in my opinion. All right, moving on. Could Dan Slott be a writer for Superman? Dan Slott has been exclusive to Marvel for a very long time, like 2 decades at this point. Maybe. This is according to Rich Johnston on Bleeding Cool, and he said that he heard this rumor at the Thought Balloon Comic-Con that was happening in London the other week, and he heard that Dan Slott is slated to write Superman for DC in 2025. And I do have this cover of Superman Adventures, which was an early book that Dan Slott wrote. When he was breaking into comics, he was writing a lot of the sort of licensed and not young adult really, but, you know, kids comics. And that included a bunch for Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes, Superman Adventures. I think he wrote Ren and Stimpy back then, things like that. Maybe some Simpsons. I'd have to double check on that one. Anyway, Slott has been exclusive at Marvel for a very long time. He wrote for DC basically right around 2000 to almost 2004, into 2004, although the 2004 book that he wrote, JLA Classified, actually didn't get published until 2007. And at that point, Slott had been writing for Marvel for a while. But I will say, there was a book I read by Dan Slott early on that I remember liking before I knew who he was. I just thought it was a cool book. It's called Arkham Asylum in Living Hell. I believe it was 6 issues. Just a really cool book showing how somebody put into Arkham Asylum becomes a villain. Like, because it's this cool story of like a white collar criminal that thinks he'll get, he's getting prosecuted in court, and he thinks that it'll be easier for him to serve a small amount of time in Arkham Asylum with psychiatrists than in like, an actual like a maximum security prison. And of course, he just gets abused by the inmates there, and he becomes something very different. I liked it. It's okay, cool. I'm not the only one that remembers. Yeah. Yep. So we'll see what happens. Great White Shark, exactly right. Great White Shark hasn't actually been used a lot by any other writers. I thought it was a great creation. A guy that had like, definitely a clear business mind and was kind of a villain beforehand in terms of how he'd be willing to screw people over. That sort of amorality. I felt like that's very relevant. Whoa, the light is that like all of a sudden bleached as though I was like regenerating like some sort of classic Doctor Who episode. All right. Anyway, it was a good character. We'll see. Some Power Rangers are helping a comic book shop that was robbed. I thought that this was just a sweet story that I wanted to highlight for a moment. So, comic store in Clovis, California, called Legends Comics and Games was broken into recently. And then actors Steve Cardenas and Karen Ashley, they were both the second red and yellow Power Rangers, respectively, on that show. They heard about this at New York Comic Con. And they volunteered to do a signing at the store and allowed the store to keep the proceeds from anything that they signed to deal with repairs. Nothing too exciting. It's just that this is coming up this Saturday. If you were in the area, maybe that's something that's up your alley. I like that. I thought that was a very kind maneuver. I got to meet Walter Jones at New York Comic Con, just hanging out at a bar. He was the original Black Power Ranger. Boy, was that guy nice. Boy, was he nice. Speaking of theft in comics, I've got a related story. This guy, I don't know if you remember him. He was arrested quite a while ago. He's in the Pacific Northwest, so I was following this story. We talked about it before on this show, but it was a while back. We're talking about, where is it? Okay, Michael David DeChellis. He's 57, lives in Oregon, and he had not returned a lot of comics that had been sent to him for professional restoration. So he faced 9 charges of first-degree aggravated theft. That's where the item is worth $10,000 or more, and 10 charges more of first-degree theft. That's only $1,000 or more. So 19 charges. And then the Lynn County Sheriff's Office completed a 6-month investigation before they brought the charges, 19 separate victims. So that is his arrest photo. Well, he pled guilty to 5 counts of first-degree theft. And I guess that was enough. So he got a plea deal of some sort. He received a sentence, 30 days in jail, 78 months with the Oregon Department of Corrections, and then 24 months of post-prison supervision. I'm not quite sure what that is. As to restitution, paying back his victims, that part the court hasn't decided yet. The rest of the 14 charges were dismissed, so I don't know what happened there. Yes, I did see the interview there. I think it's so cool that Kyle Higgins has a good relationship with a number of people in the entertainment industry. He's got a great cast. When the No One comic was coming out, they were doing that podcast with Patton Oswalt and Rachel Lee Cook doing some of the characters on the show as though they were the actual reporters doing a crime podcast. Great idea. He got like Todd Stashwick, got Yuri Lowenthal, Walter Jones now, doing some great stuff. I really admire it. Wow, thanks, Steve. Look at Steve, you're keeping me fed. Speaking of people with a booth at New York Comic Con, my buddy Adam saw Kevin Sorbo, approached him and said, "When I was a kid, you were Hercules. Now you are Hades." I didn't even know that that dude was there. He has become such a weirdo. Ugh. Forget Madam Web. Kyle is truly the one who connects us all. By the way, on this channel, this week, I am forcing my buddy Jim to watch Madam Web with me. We are going to talk about it for all of you. I think we're going to have a good time. I think that'll be a fun episode. Moving on with news. Diamond Comics delayed a bunch of comics. Here's a list of them, but let me talk about it. So last month, you may have caught this piece of news. Maybe you didn't. I'm just recapping. Diamond Distribution announced that they were closing their warehouse in Plattsburgh, New York. And they're shifting all of those responsibilities to their one in Mississippi. So, getting rid of a whole distribution facility is a big deal. You know, I can understand consolidating. Anyway, this week, retailers received a message from Diamond Distribution, and it said, quote, due to logistical issues related to the transition of accounts to Diamond's Olive Branch Distribution Center, that's the one in Mississippi, the following titles scheduled to arrive with product on sale November 27th will be delayed. These titles will now arrive with product on sale December 4th. So delayed a full week, all these books. Some boom titles, bunch of stuff from Dynamite, Space Ghost, Barbarella, Terminator, Thundercats. We've got a couple Archie books, 4 from Dark Horse, the IDW's Star Trek Defiant title, tons of Image stuff. Now, a lot of this stuff is distributed through other distributors, but if this is who your comic shop uses, these titles will all come a whole week later. Bunch there by Marvel. The only big company you really see not represented is DC because they've got their own. But sometimes a store still uses Diamond, and they basically are buying from like another distributor. They're sort of sub-distributing through some of these guys. Interesting. So you got an email from NEC. So NEC is still using Diamond for some of these books, which makes sense. Yeah, it's just a week, but you got to figure that could hurt certain comic book stores if, for instance, they use Diamond to get these books, and then there's another comic book store in town or the town over that uses Lunar or Penguin Random House, something like that, to distribute. Well, then maybe their customers go to that store and they lose out on some sales. When you're in sort of a weekly grind of releasing all these, books, that's what can happen. Speaking of distributor stuff, Scout Comics has been not having a great year news-wise, have they? Hey, Beowulf, thanks for joining us. So, they seem to have been dropped by a distributor. Specifically, Scout Comics titles have been removed from Lunar Distribution's February solicitations. If you go to their website to look at what they have available, last month, for January's releases, you could still get Scout titles. In February, nothing listed. So, allegedly, they've been suspended from using Lunar over lateness, just chronic lateness. We do know that Scout Comics faced a lot of backlash in this past year from various creators saying they weren't getting paid and they were having a hard time dealing with Scout. So I don't know what's going on there, but they're not getting lots of good publicity, I'll say that. And, I'm old enough that I remember, of course, like Image Comics being a huge deal when it came out, but a lot of those guys had trouble getting their books out on time initially. A lot of them did. And at the time, Diamond was kind of the only game in town for them. Diamond had a policy that if you were 3 months late, then you had to resolicit. So, like, there were a lot of books by guys like Liefeld and Jim Lee and some others that would get like put into like those previews catalogs by Diamond a lot. You remember those days? Yeah. Granite State Punk won't release through Scout going forward. There's a couple people that I've had on this when I do sort of an indie showcase that have had, you know, and they were happy to have gotten a deal through Scout to publish their books, and then it's not moving forward like that anymore. I know even like one or two close friends that have used Scout, and that's over. Bleeding Cool actually reached out to Scout for a comment. They're more of a news source than I am. I don't have time to do that, so I'm glad that they did. Scout did issue a comment. It doesn't quite relate, in my opinion, but maybe I'm doing too much commentary. Let me first say what Scout said. Based on feedback from retailers, it is important for us to ensure they are receiving the titles they order in a timely manner. Lunar is trying to prevent the retailers from receiving products they can no longer sell. In order to best serve our retail accounts, Lunar recently instituted a policy in which we will be suspending any new solicits from publishers that have a majority of solicited and unfilled products that surpass the amount that is being delivered to Lunar. I was confused by this statement. I don't know. It just doesn't read smoothly to me. I don't know. I'm going to keep moving. Another publisher that was having some not great publicity over like non-payment remarks from various creators was Action Lab. I don't know if you remembered that. Sorry, I was highlighting this. Scout released some darn good books. I think that they had good taste in what they were accepting. I really do. But yeah, a lot of people were saying they weren't getting paid by Action Lab, and they banded together to do a lawsuit. So this comes from The Beat, Comics Beat. They reported that a class action lawsuit against Action Lab Entertainment by over 60 creators actually got dismissed by a judge. I'll explain why. So the suit was filed this past February, and that was up in basically upstate New York. It claimed non-payment by comics publisher Action Lab on dozens of titles. I didn't properly format that. Anyway, according to the attorney that was representing all the plaintiffs, Michael Katz, the presiding judge dismissed the suit because the grounds were, he said, too many of these contracts were too different from one another. With that many different terms, he wouldn't allow it to count as a class action lawsuit. A class action lawsuit has to have the same legal basis for a complaint. And yeah, if everybody had a little bit of a different contract, or enough of them had some different contracts, unfortunately for them, that does sort of scuttle a class action lawsuit, which can be sometimes a little easier to pool resources and just have one lawyer. What it means effectively is that at this point, they would either need a smaller group to do the class action lawsuit. Not everybody benefits there, or they each have to do their own lawsuits based on their own terms of non-payment. So a lot more smaller lawsuits if they have merit. I don't know. I mean, I'm inclined personally to believe the creators from what they've been saying in various social media posts, but I haven't read the contracts. I don't know the payment terms or anything, so there's no way to know for sure. That literally is what the point of a court. Exactly. That's what seems too bad, is assuming that they do have merit, that's prohibitively expensive for most people to bother. They're like, okay, say Action Lab owes me $1,500, $2,000. Does really hiring a lawyer and paying the court fees and the time it will take, does that make sense to get this back? Or do I have to just go, I lose? Frustrating. It's not, I don't even know if it's like a broken system per se. I guess there is always small claims court. where you don't need a lawyer. You can sort of represent yourself. You submit evidence to the best of your ability, and the judge, sort of makes their call. But I don't know what the limits are in small claims court. I knock on wood, I haven't ever had to deal with anything like that. Quick note about a book that I enjoy, Hate. It was a book that Fantagraphics published that was about 90s Seattle slacker culture for the most part. It was funny, but it's very specific too. Well, anyway, Peter Baggy is getting his book Hate collected into 3 large paperback editions. This comes from ICV2. It's called The Complete Hate. That makes sense. Paperback edition of the first 30 issues, 9 annuals, and other materials. Previously, they were published in hardcover all the way back in 2020. That set of 3 volumes is basically 120 altogether. The first paperback will only cost 30. So first one, not as expensive as the rest, I guess. The first volume is going to go on sale this August, this coming August. Comes right after the sequel, Hate Revisited, is going to get it. That came out this year. Hate Revisited is going to get its own little trade paperback. I don't hate hate. I like hate. Do I like hate? No, I don't like hate. I like comic hate. I don't think hate is comical, but I do like the comic hate. All right, that makes sense, right? Yeah, happy Thanksgiving week. Maybe at the end of the show, depending on how long this takes, we can all talk about what kind of Thanksgiving plans we have. But for now, I'm going to keep powering through some news so that I'm sure that I've got like a chunk of time to both do reviews as well as an interview tonight. Yes, hate on a budget is always lovely. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. I'll just say, like, real quick, I appreciate the engagement on this channel. Is it a smaller channel compared to my other one? Absolutely. But I mean, the other channel has so many more headaches than this one. This one I have fun on, and it keeps me excited about comics, and I feel like I'm more connected with other comic book, readers. Am I fat? I'm a little fat. Oh my God, I was really proud of the interview that I did on Comic Tropes this week with Brian Hitch and Jeff Johns. I thought that it was interesting to any comic book reader. Of course, if you've read some of their comics, especially interesting. I did a lot to organize it, think through questions that were hopefully new and insightful, and did a lot of editing. To make sure I was inserting relevant imagery and stuff to try to keep it visually interesting. Show a couple reaction shots instead of just the speaker. I'm just saying I put in some work to try to make it as good as I could. And I would say that it cratered as far as views. Like, the people that responded, it's like super positive. Really nice comments. The like ratio is super high. The amount of people that saw it, so small for me. So small. And that's just the algorithm. And it just hits you sometimes, the algorithm. The algorithm does not love long-form interviews generally. It just doesn't. For instance, my wife is subscribed and has alerts for the channel because she'll watch my stuff when I'm at work. She didn't get notified. I bet a bunch of people didn't. Anyway, thanks for these comments. It seems like a bunch of you watched it, and I really do appreciate that. Just saying, that's the sort of headache. Like, you put all this effort in, you're proud of something, and then you're like, oh, nobody's even seeing it though. Like, if people were seeing it and then telling me, Chris, you didn't do a good job because of X, Y, and Z, I go, oh, okay, that's an argument. But I feel like they didn't even see it. Hopefully it just has some long-term evergreen status and people find it. I hope. I'm proud of it. I thought it was interesting to anybody that likes not just comics, but the process of making comics. We'll see. You didn't see it? That's okay. I'm not mad at anybody. I was just frustrated. I'm very proud of the Peach Momoko interview too. Yeah, I'm very proud of that one. I can't wait to share it with everybody. But I'll have a fully edited sort of classic comic tropes analysis in between. All right. Oh yeah, no, it's a YouTube thing, and that's the platform I choose to be on. So I accept it that it's not perfect. I accept it. I could go elsewhere if I was super frustrated. It's just disappointing when you put a bunch of work into something and you feel good about it. Like you're like, I like what I did. This is so weird how the brightness keeps sort of not. Sorry, my camera's acting weird tonight. I'm getting distracted. You didn't get a notification. Yeah. Some of that could be my fault. It might not just be that it's an interview and that it's long. It might be that, I hadn't uploaded a new episode on Comic Tropes for 2 weeks. I guess they just are like, nobody cares about you anymore. You haven't uploaded lately. That's the tough thing about YouTube is they want you to constantly be putting something up, constantly, or at least on a regular schedule. All right, back to the news. Sony is looking to buy a manga publisher. This comes from Reuters, just a regular news source, like non-biased. Lots of people pick up whatever they have on the wire. Reuters said that Sony has made an offer to buy the Japanese media company Kadokawa. I can never pronounce that right. Kawa, I can. That's river, but Kadokawa. I can't say it. It doesn't roll off the tongue. So if you aren't familiar with them, that's okay. But Kadokawa is a pretty big media empire from Japan. They do the Elden Rings video games. They do anime like this one that's on Netflix, Delicious in Dungeon. Oshinoko is a popular anime. They do manga like Escaflowne. Record of Lodoss War was a pretty big one by them. So they're a big company. And when this was announced, their stock shot up 23%. So Sony has been buying a lot of anime and manga related companies in the last maybe 3 years. Crunchyroll is probably the easiest name to recognize, but some like e-readers for manga they've picked up, some other like anime companies. So Sony's been like sort of buying up a bunch of like Japanese media. My coworker loves that one. I haven't seen it. I know what it is, but I haven't read that manga or or seen the anime, but I've heard that it's really good. So that would be a big deal, though. That would be one massive company buying a very, very, very large company. Black Mirror, moving to comics. Not a lot to say about it yet, but Twisted Comics. They're a UK-based comic book publisher, and it was announced this week that they're going to publish adaptations of episodes of the show Black Mirror. I hope they could eventually do new ones, too. That would be cool. I love Black Mirror. I don't know if you guys have watched. Black Mirror is really cool. It was created by a guy named Charlie Booker for Channel 4. It's inspired in large part by things like Twilight Zone. Every episode is its own twist on an idea. It now airs on Netflix. They picked it up, made a bunch of seasons. There's a 6th season coming. Plus, they made an interactive movie where you can choose your own path. There's like a million different paths. Not a million, but there's a lot. And I like it. Not every episode is perfect, but a lot of them are really good, in my opinion. The thing that's a little different is almost every Black Mirror episode is science-based, and specifically science-based in like the very near future. Like, what if our phones did this, or we had a social app like that, or we had recording technology that did this, and what would that change for the everyday person? I like the ideas. I generally think it's a great show. Yeah, I know. This show's been out for a while. It's kind of wild that it's only now getting a comic book. It feels like a natural fit. We've had, for instance, a show like Tales from the Crypt is like a supernatural twist on that, but that came from comics and then went to TV, or actually technically it went to movies that nobody remembers, and then it went to TV. Twilight Zone had its own comics back in the day. Black Mirror is dope. They're a great venue for horror and for sci-fi. Oh, that was the black and white episode, right? With the robot canines that were chasing someone. So good. Twilight Zone is badass. Twilight Zone's badass. At least one episode got a sequel. I'm trying to think if more than one did. But a couple episodes do sort of like go on a premise with somewhat similar technology. So you could like argue it's in a shared world, potentially. White Bear was terrifying. Doesn't the message kind of dilute if you make it outside TV? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think it necessarily dilutes. I'm looking forward to the next season. You know, I've never actually watched Midnight Gallery. I've heard that that's good too. I've watched a bunch of Outer Limits. I like it. I would say personally, I do actually like Black Mirror out of these types of shows the best, with Twilight Zone a very close second. I don't know. I just find Black Mirror a little more relatable is all, but Twilight Zone has great premises, great actors. I really do. I recommend it as a TV show. It's very good. Anyway, the comic is set for mid-2025. No creators announced yet, although they did announce that they'll have something for Free Comic Book Day. So that's not that far away, all things considered. Hell yeah. Oh my God. DC's anthology horror books, House of Mysteries, Strange Adventures, House of Secrets, so many good ones. I would love it if, like, I'm almost surprised that DC hasn't brought those back yet, because horror is doing great. I don't know. Freddy Krueger's Nightmares. That was better than you'd think. Like, you might, yeah, it was kind of cool. Webtoon announced $1 million contest. Although you don't actually win $1 million. It's like $1 million prize pool. Still a lot of money. So they're looking for new talent. They always are. And it's called Webtoon Legends, not Webtoon Exploits, people that have no idea what the contract says. So the new contest has a lot of money, though. And Webtoon gets viewed by a lot of people. So it will highlight emerging talent on Webtoon's Canvas platform. They've sort of got two platforms, one for like their big recognizable name creators, and Canvas is sort of like for emerging talent, and it could still be very good. It's just easier to get onto, harder to monetize completely. It will reward 40 outstanding webcomics with cash prizes and the opportunity to join the Webtoon Originals program. Grand prize winner, $150,000. Not bad. Genre winners, there'll be 3, $100,000 each. Yes, please. Genre finalists, they'll have 12. They get $35,000. That'll help you for a little while. And genre runner-ups, 24 people get $5,500. I wouldn't say no. So, if you've got an incredible idea and you think you could win, just putting this on your plate. Can't be as bad as WB's pitch us a movie and we'll pay you $50 to option it. Ooh, was that a real one? That's offensive. New Think from AWA was a cool Black Mirror type comic based around technological horror. Did not hear about that. That's sometimes the tough thing with some of the smaller publishers. It's hard to get the word out, get the marketing behind it. IDW teased some details on their sequel to Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, which I have noted. Pretty great comic. Might end up in my top 10 comics of 2024. Probably will, to be honest. Probably will. At least that was back in the early 80s, and they didn't necessarily know what they were going to do with it at the time. But yeah, it definitely wasn't much. I should submit my art to Heavy Metal. They're rebooting the magazine and looking for talent. That would be a feather in the cap, but I don't think that they'd be interested in my work. Yeah, but both Metal Erlant and Heavy Metal currently have Kickstarters, I believe. Oh, shoot. You know what? I missed a news article. Darn it. Tell you what, let me pause on this one real quick. Heavy Metal, I meant to include this in the news. So Heavy Metal has a Kickstarter, or coming up, they'll have a Kickstarter, and they have announced that they plan to pay all the creators that had done work for the previous version of Heavy Metal. The previous version never got published, but a lot of artists and writers were hired to do work, and they didn't all get paid. But the new company that like got the name and everything, they're saying that the first thing they're going to be doing is paying all those people that were associated with the title. So that's really nice to hear. It's really nice to hear. All right, let me get back to IDW and Beneath the Trees. So what's this sequel? So comicbook.com got to share this exclusively. This is the cover for Rite of Spring, the sequel. Kind of interesting thing because this is a book with talking animal characters, but they also live in a world where there are animals. And we see like what seems to be a wild bear walking into town, tracking a bunch of blood. I don't know exactly what that implies. So, but they also got a comment from writer-artist Patrick Horvath. And he said, I'm excited to begin teasing our return to Woodbrook. We're taking a large jump forward in time, around 8 years after the events of the first book. We now find ourselves in the world of the early 1990s. And along with it come all of the changes we're familiar with. The internet, globalization, suburban sprawl. For Samantha, that's the main character who's actually a secret murderer, it all means that the world she likes to keep at a distance is getting smaller and smaller. I can only imagine that, yes, things like the internet and cell phones and such in the 90s made being a serial killer harder. That isn't a spoiler, by the way. The story starts with that as its premise, and then it goes somewhere. Maybe kind of like Dexter, if you've ever seen or heard of that show. It's a show about a serial killer trying to hide what he does. I do recommend it. It's pretty cool. Yeah, what if the sequel isn't that scary? Samantha, first of all, she's just like, well, I just can't do any murders. I just get caught. I guess I'll have to stop murdering. And then this bear comes into town and people are like, oh my God. Oh, it's just cranberries. Nobody gets hurt. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. I didn't bother to see that, but I swear it strikes me as so low-level creative to take an IP that enters the public domain and the first thing you do with it is just do it as a horror. I just feel like that's low-hanging fruit. That's not clever. And apparently they've done that now with Popeye. Popeye the Slayer Man. That's not clever. Just my opinion. Valiant Comics looks to be rebooting again. So Alien Books is who now publishes Valiant titles. They're going to publish the end of their current event, which is called Resurgence, in January. Apparently, it's a great place to reboot everything because they've announced that they're going to start fresh in March with Valiant Beyond. But hey, how well are things like Absolute DC and Ultimate Marvel doing? So, whatever. Yeah, if you want to start fresh, I think they've got some good characters at Valiant. I really do think they have some good characters. They've got some good talent too. But how many of us are reading everything Valiant puts out and, want to get the back issues to figure out what we're missing? You probably should start fresh and just get it out regularly. This is according to Bleeding Cool. Quote from them. Artists have reportedly been asked to submit concepts for characters like XO, Shadow Man, Bloodshot, Harbinger for new Beyond versions, with an eye towards creating Valiant's own absolute line of books as part of a Valiant multiverse. Fine. Sure. It's just that it's been redone a bunch of times already. Maybe like, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think if I'm doing my math right, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, if they do this, I think it would be like basically the 5th reboot of the Valiant characters. I think. It's a lot. I'll do an episode someday on the history of Valiant, because boy, has it been up and down and up and down and up and down. Multiverse. Everybody loves multiverses. No, but Magnus was never something that Valiant created. They just licensed a few gold key books when they started in the 90s. Magnus Robot Fighter. What else did they license? Turok, Son of Stone, Dr. Solar, Man of the Atom. Those were all part of their shared universe, but those were licensed characters, not ones that they owned. So eventually those licenses came up, and Valiant has original characters like Ninjak, Bloodshot, XO, Man of War. So, yeah. Rick Remender and Paul Azaceta have a new book coming out that looks pretty cool to me. It's going to come out in January through Giant Generator, of course, and it's called The Seasons. What is it? In the new series, we meet the Seasons sisters. The 4 daughters of the renowned Seasons detectives who disappeared a decade prior. Now sinister forces are coalescing on the remaining family members. Can they stop what's coming for them in time? So both sort of a mystery and a horror book. And there's a link here if you want to like sort of look at that later, or just look it up on YouTube since you're here already. But they dropped a cool trailer. And I love it when comics companies make a good trailer. I really do. Yeah, exactly. Rick Remender. Yeah, it would be awesome to see Sean Chen tackle some Valiant characters again. That would be fun. Look at that. If Remender's on it, I'm sold. He good. Boom Studios dropped a few of their titles. So apparently, they didn't renew their licenses for Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Firefly. Happens, I guess. If you put their order codes into previews from Diamond, it now goes to a no info found page. I tested it. I couldn't find a page listing for any of the books that they had previously had as solicitations. One of the solicited books that was apparently finished, as compared to sort of like they had some trade paperback collections and stuff that were coming out, was this. I didn't read the Firefly books, but there was going to be a Zoe Elaine Year 1 book, Sam Humphries and Giovanni Fabiano. Now it has no plans to be released. That kind of sucks. I guess there wasn't anything more to say. Yeah. Were they? I can't claim to be a massive Firefly fan. I think I watched all of the show and I saw the movie. I saw it all. I don't remember it super well. I was like, yeah, it's good. Nothing lasts forever. I'd heard good things about their run on Buffy, but it had also been a while since I'd heard them do anything with it. They had like taken all the characters and like set it in the modern day, so like there'd been some like rebooting there, but I'd always heard good things. How big do you see Ghost Machine being in a few years' time? If they continue like they are now, pretty darn big, because they've already got some top tier talent. If they keep putting these books out and then they get like a movie or a TV show, animated or live action, I feel like that would bring a lot of attention and publicity to those guys. I don't think it would be very hard. I've heard that Joss Whedon currently does what he sort of broke into the industry doing, a lot of uncredited script doctoring. Whether we like him or not, still a talented writer, witty. So that's what I hear he's been doing is punch-ups, which is big business in Hollywood to they're like, this is good, let's make it perfect, but we're already in production, so bring on a really good writer to give us some better dialogue or something. What's the difference license-wise? You mean like the difference between how the companies license it? Like, it would be different for every company. Boom, Dynamite, Image, like they're all going to have different deals depending on the property. So it's all going to be different. There's nothing I can say that would be consistent. I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the first. I could see that being like either live action or animated. That would make sense. But my favorite is Redcoat out of their stuff. Like, I really like Redcoat. This book sounds so cool to me, folks. Out of Alcatraz. What am I talking about? Writer Christopher Cantwell. Artist Tyler Crook. I think Tyler's incredible. Incredible. They're doing a 5-issue book called Out of Alcatraz, published by Oni Press. What is it? This is the Oni solicitation, and then I'm going to give you some more. Convicts Frank Morris and Clarence Anglin, they were real people, have washed ashore in San Francisco after surviving their infamous escape from Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary in June 1962. They soon meet their gruff and disappointed handler, a mysterious young woman who's also running from something, and hope to quickly get their way north to the border, if they can even make it out of Modesto alive. Excuse me. As a dogged federal manhunt and chase and chance encounters threaten the desperate convicts, everyone involved is about to discover the same blood-stained truth. Life on the run is an even more hellish prison than Alcatraz could have ever been. So, 4 people tried to escape Alcatraz back in the summer of 1962. Frank Morris, Clarence Anglin, and his brother. And another man who I think had the last name West, but that guy got caught before he got out of prison. He stayed in prison. The other 3 swam for it. Their bodies were never found. The general consensus is they probably drowned. That's really strong waters. There's even sharks and stuff potentially. It's really dangerous, but it's not for sure. They're technically still on the wanted list as escapees of federal prison. So this sort of takes some crime, some history, and does a spin on it. Obviously, at least 2 of these guys do get to the shore, but we don't know if they did or not. They may have. They literally may have, and they may have escaped to something like Mexico or Canada. They could be alive now for all we know. Probably they drowned. Probably. But we don't know. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that they tested it, but theoretically, of course, they could have. They could have. It wouldn't have been easy, but if everything went right. I used to read everything about these 3 guys escaping Alcatraz. Pretty sure I have an autographed autobiography of the 4th guy. Oh, wow. That's really cool, man. I think it sounds like a great idea for a comic. It's a weird piece of history. I think that, in general, while we never really want to root for a convicted criminal, I think the idea of escaping, D.B. Cooper stealing money and parachuting out of a plane, or, Morris and the Anglin brothers swimming for it from Alcatraz. These are ideas that at least capture our imagination. Wow, can you imagine getting away with it? It's an interesting idea. I think it's cool. I do have something. I've been coughing a lot lately. I'm just trying to suppress it as much as possible for the stream. It's been I've been sick for over a week, but I'm out of sick time at work, and I think I'm running myself a little ragged, but whatever. You know, I actually haven't seen Birdman of Alcatraz. I am curious to. I've actually never seen it, though. I thought that sounded like a really cool comic, and if you're not familiar with the history itself is interesting, too. This is a fun, like, feel-good sort of thing. Liam Sharp is getting his Conan book published. Let me tell you the story. Just in brief. 2021, Liam Sharp shared this image that you see here on the left as part of an unnamed at the point dream project. A lot of people were like, well, that certainly looks like Conan. He didn't say that at the time. You know, he's just like, I really would love to do this. Then we cut to 2023, and Liam Sharp posted to social media that he made a 48-page black and white Conan story for Savage Sword of Conan, but that it wasn't happening for some reason. He didn't, like, you know, get gossipy or complain or anything, just not happening. But he did a 48-page story, and apparently, like, you know, we put a lot of time and effort into it. Like, it was a passion project. All right. This week, he posted to Blue Sky the following. Just got some great news. My 44-page Savage Sword of Conan script has been approved. The job of my dreams starts now. I actually wrote the first draft about 25 years ago. It's changed a fair bit since then, mind. So, unfinished business in more ways than one. I love that. Something that somebody's passionate about and has been thinking about for over 2 decades. They're finally getting to see to fruition, getting paid for it, but almost more importantly, getting an audience for it. I just think that that's a really nice feel-good story. I'm happy for Liam Sharp. I think that that's an artist who has continued to evolve and grow as an artist, like improve with his work. It's really, really cool. I think he's a good fit for something like that. Sharp and Conan are a no-brainer. No is why this took so long. Oh, no idea why this took so long, probably, right? Big fan of Liam Sharp's work, so I'm looking forward to this and Medieval Spawn. Yep, I remember his run on Incredible Hulk. Absurd this took so long. Very cool. He's got some black and white pages out there. They look very good, very detailed. Very detailed. Yeah, glad so many people are interested. I'm just happy for him. I met him, I don't think it was this past Emerald City Comic-Con, but the one before, or maybe it was the most recent Emerald City Comic-Con, actually. Yeah, I guess it was. That's in Seattle. And boy, was he nice. Just the nicest guy. Tall, too. Big guy. All right. Mad Cave got the Speed Racer rights. Not a lot to say, but a few things. So they announced that they have the rights to make new Speed Racer comics. They previously had the rights, and do have the rights, but they got those for Gatchaman, known here as Battle of the Planets. I'm not super familiar. I mean, I could pick it out visually, but I've never watched it. Same rights holders, though. So they had a relationship with them. Tatsunoko Productions. If you're not super familiar, Speed Racer originally debuted back in 1966 by writer-artist Tatsuo Yoshida. Tatsuo Yoshida was publishing that through Shueisha. I want to say that their book back then was called something like Shonen Book. It wasn't Weekly Shonen Jump, but it was something similar. So yeah, it was originally a manga. I think a lot of people know the anime adaptation because that broadcast here in the States in reruns had a catchy theme song. Maybe people know it from the Wachowski movie. I don't know. If you don't know, it follows Go Mifune as he races the Mach 5 built by his father. And that's full of puns. Go is also the number 5 in Japanese. And so, like, his name and the name of the car are technically the same. Yeah. It's a pun. The original manga was actually published here in the States, like reprinted, I should say, First by Now Comics in the 80s. And then it was also published by Wildstorm for a while. So, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. The movie's pretty wild. You know who loves it? Robert Kirkman loves Speed Racer. Loves it. I was indifferent to the movie. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I was impressed by parts of it. It just didn't all come together, gel for me. But boy, Kirkman loves that movie. Or at least he did back when it came out. And for the next several years. Last piece of news before I take a look at some comics this week. Bunch of comics were announced for what's coming out Free Comic Book Day in 2025. I just tried to jam a bunch of them in here. So Valiant Zombies Resurrection is a Valiant book. We've got Boom Studios 20th Anniversary Special. Critical Role in Black Hammer. I guess it's a flip book from Dark Horse. Dynamite's releasing a Gargoyles Demona #0 issue. Lost Marvels is interesting. That's it's published by Fantagraphics. It features a bunch of 1970s stuff by Marvel that hasn't really ever been reprinted. Bad Kitty Gets a Job by First Second. Godzilla: The New Heroes. Oops, that's not spelled right. From IDW. IDW Dark. They've announced that. That's their new horror line. They'll have a book. The Phantom. Mad Cave got the rights to The Phantom as well as Speed Racer. Another Marvel Voices book. Marvel always does that. I think they've also got a Star Wars book and a Spidey and His Friends book. EC Comics presents Blood Type. That's using the EC Comics horror brand. Oni has that. Best of 2000 AD will have some, Judge Dredd stuff. Transformers Worst Bot Ever is like a young adult Transformers book. Let's see. Hey, look who we got dropping in. That's nice of you, Nick. Nick Barucci, the visionary behind Dynamite Comics. And he's obviously secured a lot of big licenses. We're going to talk to the writer of one of his books later tonight. Thanks for dropping in. Let's see. If you haven't checked out Dynamite's Gargoyles or Gargoyles Quest, I highly recommend them. I've definitely heard a lot of people like them. Sometimes, I never watched that show. I think I was in college when it was on. So that sometimes you have these blind spots, The new Godzilla universe is going to be compared endlessly to the previous one. Godzilla constantly reboots. That's what it is. What other books are coming out? The Transformers Worst Bot Ever looks cute. Kagurabuchi / Boruto. So that's a book from Viz. Kagurabuchi's. I'm mispronouncing that. Kagurabachi. Do I still have? I guess I don't have it here. Oh, yes, I do. Hold on. I think this is it. Give me 2 seconds. I'm pulling something out from a stack of comics. Nope, never mind. I thought that I had the Weekly Shonen Jump where that character debuted. I just happened to be in Japan and I picked it up. I didn't know that he would become so popular, but popular he is. Oh, yeah, Liam Sharp and Conan. Match made in heaven. Really, really good. What other things did I have listed? Archie has a book. Power Rangers VR Troopers from Boom. Conan the Barbarian Scourge of the Serpent. So Titan's putting something out. And an Energon Universe special. That's probably the one I'm most interested in. But I do love this cover for Godzilla here. A lot of different books coming out this week. Look at that. I'm still dressed up all fancy for the new Comic Tropes After Dark. I've got some funny ideas for a potential intro video. Let me bring up some of the comics that I picked up this week, and we'll go from there. Give me a moment. As always, I'm just sort of adjusting my camera to have a nice field of view for everybody. You know what? I'm going to shift it over. Yeah, this should work. This should work. Extra camera. There we go. Yeah. What to talk about? G.I. Joe, you kind of won't. This is great, but it is issue 311, and you sort of have to already be into G.I. Joe at this point. I think that like issue 300 was a great jumping on point, and there's a lot that I could say, but I'd just kind of be speaking to the audience that already loves it. I do recommend it. I love Larry Hama. I think Chris Mooneyham has been a great addition, but it's been going for a while, so it's hard to say like what I should say about it at this point. But I do have things to say about all of these other books. Any preferences there? You can see like what I've picked up lately, and I'll just see if anybody is saying anything in particular that they want to hear me talk about first. I've got things to say about each of these books. I'm curious to see if anybody out there has any big opinions. So I'll give you a moment to respond and say you're fine with just reading the Energon Universe one. I like the Energon Universe version quite a bit. I definitely prefer Larry Hama's original G.I. Joe, but I do like the Energon Universe, and I think that they've added it well. All right, we're getting votes. That's 2 for The Moon is Following Us. Asadora, Jenny Sparks, Wonder Woman. So far, that's 2, 4. Nope, that's 3 for The Moon is Following Us. I'll get into all of them, folks. Let me pull up The Moon is Following Us. So, this is, of course, it's called Daniel Warren Johnson's book, but that does a little bit of a disservice to Riley Rossmo, who is, of course, the main artist. And I don't want to spoil any of this, but I want to talk a little bit about it. Last week, one thing that we got to learn was that the premise is this wife and husband are in this weird supernatural world, and we learned that they were actually there inside the dream of their daughter. I'm going to work on the focus here a little. Hold on. It's a little better. And issue 2 did something interesting where we realized everything in the dream world, which is where the main story takes place, is Riley Rossmo on art, but Daniel Warren Johnson is doing the art in the quote unquote real world. Oh yeah, Energon Universe is a much easier place to jump in. Much easier. It's a different continuity. It's new. There's not much history. It's really easy, and it's great art. Good stories. Yeah. Like with many Daniel Warren Johnson things, what we realize is that there is some heartache and emotional tragedy with the main characters that we haven't really dealt with. Like boy, does he like to deal with people losing others that are close to him. And we learned that the main character is kind of Sam, the mother and wife. And we just get this hint that she was losing or lost a parent. So she's got this additional trauma, and it does possibly help explain a little bit why she's the more militant of the two parents in terms of taking big chances to rescue their daughter. There's some great action. Riley Rossmo is really good storyteller. This really flows well. There's a lot to like here. Yeah, man. Jim, always nice to see you. If you can get either of them to sit in on your Ink Punks show, I think that could be very interesting. I would think Riley might be up for it. I don't have the exact date yet, but Jim did say that he and Sean would let me come on their show and draw. So we will have that sometime in December, I think. I can't wait to talk about Terminator. Oh, and Jim, one of our viewers sent in a movie called Beats of Rage for me to send to you. So you've got a present coming your way. Anyway, let's just say that this issue does feature a twist, and it gives us a little more backstory and a little more motivation for the characters. But I don't want to give too much of that away because that's kind of the fun of it. Oh, dude, that's so close. Hell yeah. I'm going to do my best, Jim. I'm going to draw my absolute best to make sure that I don't embarrass you guys. I can't wait to get to talk to Sean some more and get some insight into the craft from both of you. That's so exciting. I'm so excited. Thank you. Look at the scale. I think that scale is something that can be very tricky to represent in comics. But this is, like these parents are rescuing their daughter from essentially a castle, and there's this massive serpent creature that comes after them. And I think that they just do a great job representing that. And I can't really go past this page because then I'd start getting into potential spoilers of what exactly goes down in this issue, besides obviously some badass action. But look at how well Riley uses some negative space here. You really feel like these heroes are sort of up against it with this tide coming up over them. And if you'd filled this all in with background elements, like castles or sky or smoke, I think you would lose a little bit of how overwhelming this arc of enemies is. So that's actually a really great use, in my opinion, of some negative space framing to make this part of the threat bigger and really isolate this character. This is a big, strong guy with a weapon, but look at that. You could see the tide of this overwhelming force. And I just love little choices like that. I also get really nitpicky about when characters break panel borders. This is an example here of that happening. However, I don't think this is a bad use of it because this all clearly flows and just brings us to the next panel, which is fortunately a wide shot. So it isn't covering anything up or being basically at the same level of distance so that you can sometimes be confused if it's like a medium shot of a character in one panel and the other, but they're breaking the panel border in one. Sometimes you can miss that that's like a break in time. You can lose the importance of that panel. And I just think Riley Rossmo is making some really great storytelling decisions with stuff like that. That I think that this is an example where it actually leads into what's important here. Literally, we follow the arc of this and into this character, and her boot is pointing at the threat, this snake that, like I say, then emerges as this big, overwhelming force. And now we're dealing with a different, depth. Now we're dealing with depth. And I love that. These are really tough decisions, I think, to make as an artist. Sometimes you can think things too left to right. This is like a left to right action, right? But then we switch, and this page, a splash page, now we're going to say depth. Now we're going to say coming at you. So I read through this and I read through it fast, and then I go wow, what made that action flow so well? And I think it's these choices to vary up the shots so that you're not bored by something, but also make it very clear sort of where the almost invisible camera angle is going from one panel to the next. This one, the heroes are coming this way, and so is the enemy. And this one, it's a little bit more of a broad panoramic shot, but because the snake is in roughly the same position, we can sort of follow that change in the camera shot very easily. Very easily. Maybe I'm overthinking this. What's the name of this book? The Moon is Following Us. And it's a book about parents trying to rescue their child by just about any means necessary in a strange and surreal world where the rules of logic aren't going to work the same. It's sort of a supernatural world, but it's also a dream world, and dream logic doesn't have to follow all the same rules that anything else follows. I showed off your buddy TJ Hamilton's, Rabbit Who Fights. Oh, I didn't know, that was impressive. I won't repeat it all, but what Jim's talking about is that, I did, like I every once in a while do, a live stream of any books that people have sent to the Comic Tropes P.O. box, and among them was a book called, it's an anthology, The Rabbit Who Fights. So if you watch that episode, I have links to the people's books or social, as well as chapter breaks. So if you're curious, it really is. I was talking about that one quite a bit, Jim, in terms of like all these influences I was seeing. It was his own work, but I'm going like, there's a little bit of Mobius. There's a little bit of Paul Pope. There's a little bit of Eduardo Risso. And I don't know how accurate any of that was, but I just saw all these cool influences. Yeah. Okay. Another one people mentioned as being curious about was Asadora. This is a manga. Obviously, not everybody reads manga, but to me, comics is comics. And Asadora is by my personal favorite comic book writer and artist, Naoki Urasawa. And you'd think like, okay, a story about a young girl in the 60s who becomes an airplane pilot. Why would I be interested in that? Because that's just the context of the story, or maybe but the content is the characters in this. So she's still in like high school in the 60s, and her friend Yone is, for instance, about to become a professional singer, and her friend Miyako is about to become a professional wrestler. They all have their dreams. They're becoming adults. And amongst all that, like, totally interesting personal drama, Asadora has been hired by the military to secretly, like, patrol the oceans because there is a literal massive kaiju off the coast that is a huge threat, and they're trying to do research into exactly what the hell this thing is and how they can stop it. It's just amazing. And then they have Naoki Urasawa has no problem pausing to talk about various drama in people's lives. So it gives you occasionally, sorry if my cat is howling, occasionally gives you some sci-fi adventure, but it also gives you some Showa era Japanese drama. And I don't know how to explain it other than this is all about the characters, and it just like blends all these genres so well. And there's so many great choices Naoki does. Look at how well he just simply draws a hand. He makes it look like he probably goes like boop, 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 and he's done. But that is not easy to just draw a good hand presentation. Hands and faces are the most important things you as an artist can draw to represent the acting from that character, the emotions, the personality. And if you look at the characters, you're like, okay, well, that's sort of a cartoony face, isn't it? Yeah, quite a bit. These faces are cartoony. At first glance, you go, well, that's like manga, big eyes, hardly any nose, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I hear you. But within the context of actually reading this story, I can tell these three girls apart, okay? They're all the same age. They're all friends. They all have literal different faces. They're simple and they're cartoony, but they're emotive and they're different from one another. It's so easy, like, to tell these characters apart. And look at, like, here, I just opened a random page. This is her sort of excited to talk about, like, business stuff, being a pilot. And then this is, like, jumping to her trying to steal something for a friend and escape, like, a bunch of threats. She's climbing some alleyways, and like that's clearly the same character, but very different emotions. This is just a beautiful, beautiful book. I love it. Asadora, because it's about a girl named Asada, and like her nickname is Asadora. It starts with her very young, grade school. We're jumping ahead in time each sort of volume. She's 17 now. She makes the people around her better. That's what's cool about her. That's what's awesome about Asa. For instance, her family, most of them, were killed in the famous typhoon, let me remember the name of it, the Isewan typhoon. That's a real disaster that happened, and a lot of people were killed. Although this presupposes that within that typhoon was this massive kaiju that was stomping around. During that typhoon, she was kidnapped by this down on his luck, like World War II pilot that had become like homeless and everything. But he's got skills as a pilot, and she was like, well, like there's all this terrible stuff happening during this typhoon. You're a pilot? Stop kidnapping me. You have to get us up into the air so that we can see what's happening and we can drop like supplies and stuff to people. And he becomes like her teacher and mentor and becomes like a much more stable guy. Like he recovers his honor and isn't homeless anymore. And he gets a job and a company, and, it fills a bit of a father figure role. But he started as like somebody that was ready to kidnap a kid just to get like a meal. It's incredible how much she improves the lives of those around her. So the story is great. The art is great. There's a lot of great books by him. If you're looking for an entry point, yeah, we're only 8 volumes into Asadora, and there's more to come. But if you want a shorter story to see if you like him, I strongly recommend Pluto. That was an 8-volume adaptation of the classic Astro Boy story, The Best Robot in the World. A great murder mystery story that Urasawa made much more realistic than the sort of cartoony Astro Boy, but followed the same plot and characterization. It's a good entry to see if you like his art style and you like his world building. I think it still has a lot of emotion and power. Pluto is a good entry point. Books like Monster and 20th Century Boys, much more epic. But what he tends to do is grounded human stuff. There might be one small sci-fi element somewhere, but it is about people, families, work, and it's relatable as hell. Yes, hands and faces are important, but so is the mustache. Totally agree. Anyway, beautiful, beautiful book. What else to talk about this week? I'm going to talk about one that like disappointed me a little bit, and I was a little surprised. Because I really like Jonathan Hickman generally. And I think that like his Ultimate Spider-Man is very interesting. It's about a guy who's in his 30s and has a family and responsibilities, and then has to sort of fit the idea of becoming Spider-Man into that. But he's a father and a husband first, and Spider-Man second. And it's about him sort of dealing with a world that didn't give him an opportunity to excel, and now he has that opportunity, and how does he deal with it? Those are very interesting ideas. There's even funny quips by Spider-Man in this. For instance, Spider-Man's stopping some bank robbers, okay? And he's doing all his like slapstick, not slapstick, but like his quippy stuff. And this lady that's a hostage is like, why don't you shut up? You're going to get everyone killed. And I've always sort of wondered that, like, why only the enemies seem to be annoyed by Spider-Man's constant loudmouth blabber. Because it probably would be so stressful to have, like, a villain or a criminal threatening you. Some guy comes in a costume and is just cracking jokes. We know that that's Spider-Man sort of having fun and loosening up and trying to throw his enemies off balance. But, like, that would actually probably be a little scary if you were like the person that was about to potentially be rescued and this stranger just shows up and is making jokes while you've got guns trained on you. I thought that was a little bit funny, to be honest. But what sort of disappoints me is a little bit the pace here. We're sort of like 3 issues into Spider-Man dealing with Kingpin's Sinister Six. That's a beautiful John Cassaday remembrance by Marvel, but we've seen this a couple weeks. It is a beautiful remembrance, though. And I like the characterization here a lot. So I'm not like, I don't like this book. I'm just a little disappointed with how slow this goes, because that was like the action beat of the comic. Let's see how many pages that was. Let me just calculate this, okay? For an action beat, we're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know. Maybe that's fair. 7 pages out of a 22 page. I guess that is a third. I guess that isn't too bad. A third for action is fair. Now that I think of it, it just feels not like super important. I don't know. Yeah, I was going to just mention that the cover is a lie, right? It shows him going up against an ultimate black cat. They don't even meet in this issue. She shows up at the end. The cover should have been him going up against Mr. Negative or Mr. Negative's goons or something like that. But so I love the quips. I love the character development. I would just honestly love a little bit faster with the plot. Maybe that's weird of me to say. I've loved so many things that Hickman has done, and I've been patient with him. Like when he built up to Secret Wars over like 2 years of 2 Avengers books, I was like, yeah, I'm with it, man. I just feel like Ultimate Spider-Man, a little slow. Just my 2 cents. Folks, let's take a break from that. Let me vary this up with something. We have a guest today. I told you that we would be having a guest. I'm very excited, actually, to welcome the guest. He's here. He's waiting in the waiting room. I'm dressed up for the guest. We're going to have on a guy well known for writing for a wide variety of publishers. You know, he wrote just last year around this time, he was putting out a Christmas book of Batman and Santa. You guys were talking earlier about like enjoying his Red Hulk book at Marvel, but he's got a new book coming out at Dynamite that we want to talk about a bit tonight. Zootopia. Folks, let me welcome a writer, an artist, an animator, and a guy with an exclamation point in his name. Jeff Parker. Jeff.
Hey, Chris.
Hear me okay?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going very well. Thank you for giving us some of your time today.
I dressed up too, and
that's dressed up. Okay, thank you.
For as much as I'm getting today. Sorry. Next time though, man, I'll totally bring the tie and coat.
No, I'm just having fun tonight. I usually just have like on a hoodie or something. Yes, my viewers want me to do a Rodney Dangerfield impression.
Hey.
Jeff, I know your work mostly like as a writer, but you did break in as an artist. You were drawing Wonder Woman at one point back in the day, right?
Yeah, that was like the first big job I got. That was a couple of issues of Wonder Woman.
It just makes me wonder, do you still draw? I don't know. Like, I haven't seen whether you've posted this. I don't know everything, but do you still draw for your own enjoyment at all? Do you still draw?
I totally do. And a lot of what I do is like, you mentioned the Christmas thing, and we're doing another one, 5-parter. So starting this week and going on for the next 4 weeks. And Lucas Kettner is the artist. And a lot of times on stuff like that, especially where it would take me a lot longer to just explain something, I could just draw. Like I'll do sketches of it looks like this and send those roughs that no one has to see except for the artist and the editor. And but it helps us, like it really makes it so much simpler. Like I'd be describing forever when I could just sketch it out and show that it's actually not as complicated as I make it sound.
I get that. Larry Hama, G.I. Joe, has said that that's a way that he still will do it a lot of times for his artists, that he can just thumbnail faster than he could sometimes write a description for certain.
That would have been so cool to have some Larry Hama roughs, wouldn't it?
Oh my God. I think that there's so much work probably from the 80s and 90s that probably just got thrown away, that he was doing some pretty cool drawings. Yeah, I try not to think about that.
Larry can do anything.
Oh, he's very impressive. Yeah, very impressive. I agree. Just a related thing, and I just happen to have it there as a prop. And then you, I know you worked in animation on the Rusty and Big Guy adaptation. Yeah. Is that right? I'm just curious. I've talked to Jeff Darrow and stuff, but I never thought to ask this. Did you guys in the animation studio, did you guys ever meet Frank Miller or Jeff Darrow?
If
in that context,
if they ever came out, it was before I came on, and okay. I believe I asked about this, and I don't think they were ever there. They may have done some luncheon or something and then went away. So that's unfortunate. But then again, the cartoon really fleshed out a lot of stuff that wasn't in the book anyway, to make it so it could be a series.
Yeah,
because the original books are pretty much Miller setting Darrow up to just show off destroying the city, and things like that. All the monsters. You and it's obviously something you can't do in animation. It's just way too much.
Or if you could, it would be a much shorter show.
I learned a lot.
What was your role there?
I was a storyboard artist, and
okay,
yeah. But the writers of the show were really good. We would come out of the screenings after we had done where you had a rough animatic to watch the cartoon, and we were all just laughing our heads off. We thought it turned out great most of the time. It was really funny. But the thing was, they were at the time, Fox Kids was moving it all over the place, trying to dare you to find this cartoon, at all kinds of hours and days of the week. And when they finally left it in place for a couple of weeks, it started getting really good ratings. And then they called back Sony Animation and said, "Hey, can we do another season?" And it's well, you should have let us know, because now everybody's spread to the four winds. Everybody went on to something else, because we thought we were done. And I was doing live action boards on stuff like commercials and music videos. And I was working on my first graphic novel, The Interman, at the time. And so those two went together really well. Something to do in LA. And but yeah, I learned so much on that. There were a lot of really good board artists with tons of helpful advice.
That's kind of cool to hear about. Did you find yourself appreciating comics in a different way, sort of having stepped away from them and then coming back to them? Or
was
it all just sort of just life takes you?
I definitely got more into seeing it as if I'm watching through a movie aperture, like the way a film might be made. And also, I sat in this back section where all the Men in Black artists were, and I was literally next to the office of Darwin Cook. So whenever Darwin came in and had a minute, I was always bugging him for just tell me Warner Brothers stories and talk about what he was working on. And that, of course, was about the time he was about to come out with New Frontier, and which to me is one of the best things this century so far. But yeah, I loved talking with him about story and all that sort of thing. And then he was very helpful. He co-wrote the pitch for the whole Future Quest thing that we did at DC with Doc Shaner. Really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember that you and Doc Shaner did that. I guess I forgot that Darwin was involved.
Well, he was. Yeah, you would only know if you had read the interviews early on. Okay. He was going to be a lot more involved, and then of course he got his diagnosis, and it naturally he just wanted to finish the thing he was doing with Gilbert Hernandez. and
right.
Twilight Children, and so that was terrible. I mean, what a giant. And
Absolutely.
but yeah, I learned a lot. Once again, I learned about how to do a good pitch from him. That was really nice because I've never thought it was a strong suit of mine.
You've got a lot of great collaborations under your belt at this point. One thing that I found interesting was looking at the scope of the studio you're associated with. I only sort of learned about this somewhat recently, even though it's very close to me. Helioscope. You guys are a pretty big studio at this point. Like, what kind of do you spend like physical time in a studio with those guys?
Yeah, especially lately, I've been going in a lot more, and it's great. Like, I wouldn't even, if it weren't for like Steve Lieber and Colleen Coover bullying me into using Clip Studio at one point, I probably would still be on Photoshop and like kind of limping along. Whereas, Clip Studio, which was formerly Manga Studio, is feels way more natural to work on when you're drawing. And making color suggestions and all that sort of thing. Of course, most of the time I write, and I'm just using Word. But yeah, no, we go in, and the nice thing is like everybody will occasionally pose for each other, which helps a lot.
That's so cool.
Yeah, like Steve he's been working on the new Metamorpho series.
Yep.
And he'll ask everybody if like, hey, can you all get together for just a few minutes? And he'll show who said they didn't get Clip Studio.
Just somebody saying he's having trouble figuring it out.
It's just like Photoshop, except the drawing works better. It's just they move. It's not all the same things. They're just called something different. Once you get used to the drop down menus, I think you'll like it. Just open up a file in Clip and just start messing with it and see. I bet you'll like it eventually.
Sometimes though, that's the advantage
also
of
probably
getting
better than what he got 4 years ago.
That's a fair point. But I think it's also one of the advantages, like, comics can be, even though we collaborate a lot of times, like a writer or an artist, a colorist, maybe an inker, maybe a letterer, editors, the actual work can sometimes be very isolated.
Yes.
You sort of like, you might talk on the phone, you might meet in person for lunch, depending on where people live, but you do a lot of it by yourself. It must be kind of cool to be able to have access to that, to a studio with all these people that can like sort of encourage you and go like, oh no, you should use, Clip Studio, just mess around with it, do XYZ. What a huge advantage you guys have.
No, you nailed it. In that most cartoonists are just working in their basement or their attic, never on the main floor. And, and they're by themselves and they're going out of their minds slowly, or not so slowly sometimes. And being in a room, it really makes you produce. Everybody who comes in just stays busy, and I think it helps your focus. And you see someone else doing something you like, and it gives you an idea, and you run back to your desk and do something. Or then I find out like somebody has time, and it's like, oh, and I know about some job that they might need to know about. So there's always that. But it's a lot of different influences, and also we sometimes get people coming in, starting out, and we can give them a lot of advice and just let them work for a little bit in there, and then just kind of chime in on their layouts and their finishes and show them tricks and stuff like that. Because, cool. People did that for all of us when we were younger.
If you folks don't know 100% what I'm talking about, maybe I didn't lay it out, I just want to mention, look up Helioscope. They're a studio in Portland. Portland is just a city that has a fantastic comic book scene. I think a lot of that is probably thanks to Mike Richardson deciding to start Dark Horse there. But for whatever reason, a lot of comic book shops, good amount of comic book creators, and they've got this huge studio, Helioscope. They do comics, storyboards, all sorts of amazing things.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking about it a little. Just something I find interesting, learning that it was close. But let's talk about your upcoming comic, Zootopia.
Yes.
Which, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised in this day and age that something like Zootopia gets a comic, but I wasn't expecting it, I have to admit. And I sat there and I thought, well, maybe this does make sense. I'd love to hear your take on it. You know, Zootopia, the main characters are cops. Does that make this book a procedural, or is that just their job and it's something else, or is it a blend of things? Like what is the tone?
It is a procedural. You know, it's not Law and Order, but you know, unless it's like Law and Order with a bunny and a fox at the core of it, and a big ox who yells at them, and yeah, we're following Judy and Nick around on, like, from at the beginning of the morning when Chief Bogo gives them their assignment and what they go out and do. And of course, because of who they are, they stumble into bigger things because they just kind of can't help it. So they seem like they're definitely on the path to be detectives at some point.
Oh, okay. I like that. And
yeah. I can't decide that. It just seems that way to me.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I understand. You're playing with this, but it's not just yours to play with.
Oh no, Disney will tell me if I'm getting ahead of myself. You know,
do they like, yeah, like what kind of limits is that? Like a helpful thing? Is it like tricky? Tell us a little bit about like working within those boundaries. Like what kind of adjustments do you have to do?
Now, see, I always rag on any big corporation, but actually they've been surprisingly cool and like and green lighting just so much stuff that we've been coming to them with. But like, you know, once in a while they'll catch me with like, I make up a part of Zootopia you didn't see in the movie. And, you know, and they're like, no, we haven't defined that. And they don't want to they're going to let the features do that. So that's understandable. Yeah. But it's also understandable. I'm going to try to get away with anything I can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And their big thing is also they like things to be, you know, going back to talking about animation, you refer to the characters as being on model. So,
oh, sure. Yeah.
You know, like in comics, we're used to people putting a little more of their style into something, but they're not used to that at all. They're used to things looking like it looked when you saw it in 2017 and or whenever that was. And
something like that.
Yeah. And I remember being surprised. Like I was sure like, oh, they're going to come out with another one really fast after this, because it was so good and everybody was so into it. And then I guess just all kinds of stuff was happening and in entertainment. So I'm glad they're finally getting to it, because I've been waiting just like everybody else.
Potential good synergy for you too. Like, you know, if they're announcing like a movie at the same time that there's a big comic book coming out, I mean, it'll just hopefully share some audience there.
Yeah, like they won't tell me what's in the movie, and I don't want to know because I want to be surprised. But you know, since they do know, they would definitely stop me if I was just treading the same ground or something like that. Probably, I think. I would hope so.
You've done crime books and sci-fi and superheroes and stuff. Like, what was the appeal of this potential opportunity? Where did you go? Like, oh, I see what I could, you know, get out of this as an artist, as a creator. Like what was the appeal for you?
I felt like I really liked the tone of the movie. I love all the designs. I love all the animals and stuff like that. But they hit a more adult tone than they usually do with their animation. Mm-hmm. Like you go back and watch it again, there's some kind of heavy subjects kind of being dropped through there. They're not just cooking it up like a DreamWorks movie or anything. Like, you know, they're talking about some uncomfortable stuff. Yeah.
I was surprised. I agree. Like the characters, they're funny. The humor evolves naturally out of a character like Nick or even honestly Judy. But you're right. Like the world that they live in has some very serious issues that just naturally come up, and yet you get to work with them as a metaphor instead of having to be explicit about anything. Like, when
And
you're
that
like, oh
makes,
my God, that's
it's like the old
depressing.
Twilight Zones. You get to address things with a remove that lets you really like do something with it. Whereas when you're dealing with it straight on, then you feel like, well, I'm being
Some heavy stuff.
I'm turning this into entertainment. So you always have to have a way that it can be entertainment. And it is all ages, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's all ages in the way Pixar is.
Okay.
Which is still them, but they have their own rules. They would never have done the nudist camp scene in a Pixar movie,
that's true.
The whole thing with the axe, and it's such a good laugh because you get through. They're literally just showing the animals the way they look, or whatever. But Judy's so horrified and uncomfortable, and Nick's enjoying watching how uncomfortable she is. It's just great character stuff.
Any sort of predators or something that weren't featured that you were able to like sort of fit in, or should we be surprised?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like I
know it's early days.
Yeah, I try to look to the backgrounds to see like what they've established already, because that'll help Alessandro Ranaldi.
Good point.
So don't want him to have to make up everything. The guy already has the enormous job of like replicating the work that took hundreds of artists to do, but do it all himself in 20 pages. It's like, I don't know how he's doing it really, but he's really pulling it off. It's impressive. Like everyone acts the way you expect them to act. There's no false bits. You think, wow, that really seems like a Nick move right there or something, or that's Clawhauser. Like he nailed his whole mannerisms.
That's beautiful. What's the collaboration like? Is Alessandro, I don't know, I'm just like, is he over in Europe or something?
Yeah, and so
make it tricky at all?
We're time separated, and Ranaldi, so I just turn the script. I say, "Ciao, Ranaldi," and or whatever, and that's mostly Nate Cosby dealing with him. But we occasionally we'll occasionally Lady Hawk together where we're awake at the same time, and say, what a weird metaphor that was. Sorry, kind of works with the animal thing. So we can kind of communicate, but Nate has to be our go-between most of the time.
I'm glad that it's working out. What any sort of length on this, or is it just right now indefinite? Are you guys doing it as a short series, like an arc, or are you
the first arc is 6 issues?
Wow, that's big.
Yeah, and like usually, they only like a 4-issue arc or something like that. So I feel like, thanks, Ben.
I got
it. But and that's for my fellow olds out there. But yeah, no, I feel like they're thinking like this might have legs to make more bad animal jokes, but it's easy to like get fired up about a story and run with it with them, and they approved. I think the concept's pretty fast.
That's great to hear.
For a big corporation, that's not easy.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds really promising. Anything else we should keep our eyes out for from you right now, Jeff?
Let's see.
Promote anything you want. Plug in.
My main thing is Zootopia and Batman Silent Night Returns special starting up. Everything else I'm working on is too far out to like you'll have forgotten it by the time you'd see it. So yeah, but it's kind of nice to have something big right here in December and then January, which is everything else gets dropped in summer, and I'm okay with getting a lot of winter spotlight. I think like that's when you need to be inside reading.
Well, maybe that will become an ongoing thing, like 2 Batman projects in a row around this time. Now, Zootopia. Yeah, we'll just call November,
December. Each other out. There's a lot of crime fighting going on.
Jeff, I really appreciate you sharing some insights and sharing a little bit of your history with us. I think I've got the links for people that are curious for Zootopia's order codes and the website in the description below.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much for giving us some of your time tonight.
Yeah, please have me back on. I like, it's fun to talk.
We'd be happy to.
You
Absolutely.
actually do your homework and like, oh man, wait, Chris knows what he's talking about. I get
a little bit.
That's it. That's exciting for me.
Good. You know what? The last thing I want to do is have a guest on here and ask them the same sort of thing that they've been asked a million times. Is all. And I know you know everybody talks about all the same stuff, but I'm trying to make it at least a little interesting or fun for you, and I appreciate it.
It really works. I mean, it completely like suddenly it makes your imagination suddenly pop to life. And I don't say my canned responses. I actually give you a real answer. So thank you.
Oh, and a couple people just like dropping in real quick that they really loved your Thunderbolts run too. So
yeah, make me sign that omnibus at a show sometime. I don't mean to make you carry those big heavy omnibuses, and those things can stop.
Well, hopefully I get to bump into you in person too sometime. I'm in Seattle. You're down in Portland, so maybe at some convention someday we'll see each other. And but I appreciate you giving me some of your time today. I really do, and I would love to talk again sometime.
All right, and thanks for dressing up. You look great.
Thank you, sir. Have a great night.
You too.
That was fun for me, folks. I've never talked to Jeff before, but he was great. I thought that was a lot of interesting insight. And wow, real quick, Zootopia was like one of the better Disney movies in the last several years, but I wasn't even thinking of that until we were just talking. I think it was somewhere around 2017, and that is a while ago, all things considered. But anyway, what a great world. If you don't know, if you haven't seen it, Zootopia is about a world where all mammals evolved into wearing clothes and having jobs, but some animals are obviously predators and some are small. And the initial sort of entry point is that Judy, who's a rabbit, wants to be a police officer. How does a tiny little rabbit, like, be competitive arresting, I don't know, a bull or a wolf or something like that? So it's an interesting bit, and they've got a mystery at the heart that involves like all the different classism there. It's pretty cool. But Jeff has a really interesting history, right? Like artist, animator, writer, works at a bunch of different companies. I think it gives you like a unique perspective. I really do. Anyway, don't start a howl. Exactly. By the way, just since he's here, Ben is somebody that I've known, I think like 25 some years now. And he's got a YouTube channel under this name. If you're into Lego, Ben does the most chill live streams where he builds Lego, and a lot of times he builds his original creations. He's really, really good at Lego engineering. Something, even if you like Lego, is not easy. He's drawn comics and stuff himself. He's an artist, but I'll just plug my buddy's website on YouTube there. He's a great guy. It's thanks for dropping in, Ben. It's nice to see you. We'll go back to looking at a few of the comics that came out this week before I wrap everything up. Let me open up the right there. Yeah. Tell you what, since we were just talking about Dynamite, I'll talk about a different Dynamite licensed comic, Terminator. Issue 2 came out. And I'll tell you something. When I read issue 1, I was just a little confused as to whether that issue was the first of an anthology idea or something bigger. That's the only thing I had. I was like really into that we were getting some new characters and a Terminator was hunting them over like a generation. That was different and I liked it, but I was curious where Declan was going. Well, now I'm starting to get it. It is a little bit more of an anthology idea. Terminators they must be being sent back to target future dangers. This Terminator goes back to the Vietnam conflict, 1976 Saigon. Okay, and there's an American soldier who's been told to pull out with all the other soldiers, that they're being overrun. And he's like, no, I've got like a treasure I need to get before I evac with everybody else. And he comes across a Terminator. And this Terminator, like, we get to see a Terminator in full badass mode, because he is just taking like literal like military attacks, and like he like knocks a tank over at least a little bit, and like is like tearing tank treads off one tank tread and calculating it to throw it at another tank. He's doing cool things that we're like, wow, like what's the extent of what a Terminator could do? Well, a Terminator in a war zone is different than a Terminator hunting, like a waitress in the city. A Terminator going up against actual soldiers and stuff, and having access to all these small and large arms is different. It's pretty badass, and also in a way helps highlight how scary a Terminator is. But yeah, he comes across this American soldier, and we see things in Terminator vision. And I think that this one panel is giving us a lot of information, not just about this story, but possibly about what the premise is, because the Terminator has a reference photo here of this soldier with a redacted, for some reason, like wife and child. So, and he's been sent to terminate this guy. But the child has already been born. We are told that he's like married. So I'm imagining this guy is a future Resistance member. That's what I'm thinking, that like these Terminators have been sent back in time to just target other Resistance members. It's an interesting idea, and it's cool seeing a Terminator do badass stuff. All torn up. The art I will call like better than serviceable. I don't absolutely love it, get excited by it if I'm being like critical in any area, but it does show good stuff. It's not confusing in any way. I can tell the characters apart. I can tell the action very clearly. There's no problems with any of that. I just go like, okay, I'm not getting excited by these sort of like, medium shots where maybe we could have had a little more depth to some of this, like a lot of like sort of medium shots. But that might be personal preference. Maybe that would be too distracting. I don't know. Unless you have something to compare it to, I don't know. Oh yeah, Declan, you're right. Old Dog is a great sort of representation of how badass his sort of spy / military stuff can be. But he's doing Terminator here, and this one is to be continued. There's also these backup 2-page stories written by Sal from Comic Pop. And they're promising, but 2 pages it was really hard for me to remember those exact previous 2 pages. That's very short. That's very short. I'm glad that like Sal's getting this opportunity. I think the artist here is great. I really do. This artist I love. Which artist was this again? Colin Craker. Right, Colin Craker. I like that. And it's cool. Like one thing we see here is that a Terminator goes into a hibernation mode, hiding in the sands of the Middle East for his target in the future. I'd just say that 2 pages is a lot for asking us to remember month to month. That's the only thing I wish it was like a little bit more at a time. Yeah, a little like reading newspaper Spider-Man. The only thing I'll say that's better here is that they're not recapping. They're not spending one panel to like recap what happened yesterday. That was some really slow reading. Yeah, 2 pages at a time. I don't know what the reasoning there was. I'm curious to see where it goes. That might read better in a trade paperback format, whereas I am trying to keep up with what comes out each week. But let's just also say this main cover by Declan, that's pretty fantastic. That is just so badass and cool. And that looks like it could almost be another movie cover to me. Like this huge sort of napalm burst going off behind the Terminator robot out there in the Vietnam fields. Like, that is incredible. But I think it's some of the impressive stuff to me is the verisimilitude this has to what was going on. I don't know how accurate this is, but it feels to me, like Declan did his research for, like describing like the time and the city and what was going on with the military, how they operated, what they wore, the actual environments. I'm sure that the artist had to do a bunch of research too, because this is a period piece, really. This is a period piece. So I thought that was cool. Chappie, don't surf. Oh, yeah. You know what? Speaking of Sal, to help promote this, he was on Sasha's channel last night, as in Casually Comics. And I think they talked for over 2 hours about comics and what Sal's doing in Terminator and some of his other things that he's done in comics. Hey, nice to see you, Brunson. Thank you. So yeah, over 2 hours of Sasha and Sal talking comics. Go check that out. I think it's had 1 million views. So not literally 1 million, a ton of views. So maybe you guys already saw it. You were there for it. Got it. What else can we talk about? We talked about Asadora. Just real quick. Liked a lot. Was okay. Starting to lose me. I'd love to be positive all the time. But I have talked up a lot how much I've enjoyed Tom King's stuff this year. Helen of Windhorn, it's going to be very high in my top 10 list of comics that came out in 2024. Tom King wrote that. Tom King's also writing this Jenny Sparks story. And the first issue, I was like, interesting. Second issue, I was like, oh, this is interesting more than I expected to. Third issue, it's kind of lost me. I feel bad. Great art, first of all, by Jeff Spokes, okay? Really, really wonderful, expressive, engaging, surprising art. Lots of things that are done well, from tiny gestures to expansive, realistic environments. A lot of great art. Zero complaints when it comes to any of the art in this. I wasn't super familiar with Jeff Spokes before this. I like his art a lot. It's very good. There are a lot of panels, and it's taking place across 2 time periods. I like what it's talking about. In one, Jenny Sparks is going after this CEO of a huge corporation that screwed people over back around 2011 when there was like that housing crisis because banks skirted and changed regulations, and they were giving out loans like candy to people that probably were not qualified. Well, in many cases, it's been proven that they weren't, for the amount that they were getting loaned. So what that meant is that people were taking loans for something that they couldn't ultimately pay. And it meant that a lot of people got foreclosed on. Okay, well, that's a decent villain. That's an interesting enough thing. But then it's also contrasting that with a story where Captain Atom, who is like cosmically powerful, like, the level of like Silver Surfer or something, if you don't know Captain Atom super well. And he's got about 5 to 7 hostages in a bar, and Jenny Sparks has come in to negotiate that. Those are 2 very different stories. I guess it's to be about like how Jenny goes into like these situations to just do the right thing. I don't know. It's a lot of, these are both interesting ideas. I didn't fully understand how they connect. Maybe I'm dumb. And I just didn't get this one. That's possible. Okay. I'm not perfect. I don't know. I like the art. I like the characterization. I even like the idea of these potential debates, like a superhero losing it a little and holding people hostage. A superhero going after a white-collar criminal who has ruined lives. Those are interesting ideas, but I don't quite get it. It didn't come together for me. I'm really sorry, because I could be wrong, but I can't really recommend this one right now. I don't get it. And in the same week that this comes out, and like I'm saying, like, sorry, Tom King is writing. I'm not picking up what's being put down. I read this Wonder Woman and I go, oh, well, this is brilliant. So that's what like makes me like doubt myself on this. But all I can do is share my own opinion. So we've got Tom King and Daniel Sempare, whose art is just incredible, of course. And this tells like sort of a split story, but it's fun and cool. Wonder Woman has her allies each taking out the money-making mechanisms of this powerful villain. That's all you need to know for now. And she's having her comrades do it because she is in mourning and has used that mourning to ask the gods for a blessing, and she's now got a daughter. She's got a baby daughter that she's watching over for now. Okay? This one is like, this is such a fun way, though, to start the issue. Cassie, Wonder Girl, is like piloting a jet fighter after a fully automated battleship, which has most of the funds that this evil organization has. They just like keep it out at sea, off the books, off like everybody's radar, etc. It explains why the good guys find out about it, but it's just, this is cool. She's getting shot up, but she's invulnerable to the weapons fire. Like climbs out on the cockpit and just like takes a jump off and pilots the plane into the ship to blow up all those assets. That's a great start. That's a really cool looking action scene. I thought that was fun. Yeah, like Immaculate Conception. She forms a baby out of clay last issue and asks the gods to give it life, and they grant it. So we do know from this run, we're in issue 15. Yeah, 15. A lot of the previous issues have had small backup stories of her daughter, either as a toddler or a young girl or a teenager, being watched over by her brothers, I'm putting in quotes, Damian Wayne and what's Superman's son's name? I'm blanking on his son's name all of a sudden. Who cares? Whatever. And those are funny backups. It's kind of a light joke after like really serious drama. There's been one or two fill-in artists, but they've been pretty uniformly spectacular. The art in this has been fantastic. But Daniel Sempare's drawn most of them. Yeah, thank you guys, John Kent. Really funny backups. So yeah, and then like there's her other allies like Yara Flor, or I'm not going to give them all away, but Donna Troy. This one's kind of funny. The main assets for these bad guys were kept on this battleship. And by the way, the colorist did a great job here, showing some depth to this explosion as well as a bit of a reflection on the water. That's all on the colorist. Let's pull up the colorist to thank them. It's probably, I think it's Moray. Yeah, Tomio Moray. Great colors. The bad guys have their assets hidden in different places. They say in this that they've got a deal with Solomon Grundy to, he swallows this massive diamond that's worth a ton of money. And as long as he keeps swallowing it, because it goes through his system, they get him out of jail every time he's ever been arrested. It's a little funny, this one. Anyway, it's got some great action. It's moving forward the story very slowly because, like, this evil guy Monarch and his organization have done Wonder Woman so badly, but she is not acting in a dangerous way. She's being very methodical with how she's going to dismantle them. They have really brutalized her, like mentally, and taking away people that she cares about. It's been a great run. This is fantastic. And this cover, look at that. You go, okay. You know, a lot of times for a good cover, you need something dynamic, right? There's like an exciting pose, for instance. Or this one had like, you know, this huge explosion and like, you know, the characters highlighted against it. It's just one example. This is really just the characters staring you down, right? But you know why it looks cool? Like, this is just good acting. This is all like, you know, like what the artist is doing with the face. I mean, it's also good composition. Like the way that they can have this logo just sort of like, instead of like literally being, you know, part of her costume, it's going across and matching up at the same places. That's good. Yeah, this has been a slow but steady burn, and it's great. It's been having like increasing sort of like hills and rises and falls. I love it. I guess I'll talk a little about the last book that I brought out for today. I just decided, okay, so Zeb Wells' run ended, and they're doing like, you know, I don't know whether it's 8 or 12 issues or what, but Joe Kelly and is it Kelly McGinnis? Joe Kelly and Kelly McGinnis? Am I thinking of their names right? I hate how like you used to be able to always get the credits on the first page, and now you have to jump like to the end or the middle. Ed McGinnis. What was I thinking? Yes, of course. Joe Kelly and Ed McGinnis. It's a little depressing. It's different, and I give them credit for that. So we set up that like Peter Parker is always, you know, late for appointments with friends and dates and his aunt, and he's always, you know, misplacing his keys or losing his camera or money, this, that, or the other. Okay, so he's got problems. Dr. Doom right now is the Sorcerer Supreme, and he gives Spider-Man a mission that like he unfortunately is not able to say no to. And that is, he is going to have to go up against 8 children of this god, Kitterak, the one that gives Juggernaut his powers. The Crimson Bands of Kitterak is also a spell Doctor Strange could do. Well, now there's a new Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Doom, and he's like, yeah, Doctor Strange used to fight these guys. I don't have time for that. So Spider-Man, you can have that job. Oh, and you can have that job because the job involves dying and being reborn as you go up against each of these 8 guys. And each time you die, it feels like it takes, you know, like almost 100 years, and it's the most pain you can possibly endure. And I don't have time for that. So he gives Spider-Man that job, and Spider-Man has to like sacrifice himself and then get reborn. I know Spider-Man sometimes goes dark, but that's pretty dark. That's the premise of where this is going. I really hope Spider-Man can not have to go through this kind of pain 8 times, because that just seems like an awful lot of torture to put poor Peter Parker through. Can Peter sometimes get a win and get ahead in life? I will say that while I thought the pacing on Ultimate Spider-Man was a little slow, right? That was my complaint is, oh, it's a little slow. Well, at least it still gives him a wife and kids and friends and a stable job. I like seeing that kind of stuff for Spider-Man. Okay. I love the characterization of Dr. Doom. I'm like, yeah, that seems like something Dr. Doom would do. He's like, oh, I've got this responsibility, and guess what? I'm delegating it to you because it's not worth my time, and I know that you'll do it. But oh my God, I don't think I'm going to follow this because it's just too depressing for me to think that this superhero is going to have to go through that a bunch. I'm like, how much misery does he have to go through? You know, I don't think that was really the point in those early like Ditko Lee issues or the Ramita Lee era, Jerry Conway and stuff. It's like, yeah, Spider-Man always had, it was like he was always late for work or a date, this, that, or the other. But it wasn't like he was feeling misery all the time because of those things, right? It was more just like, look, here's a little bit of soap opera drama, but the cumulative effect of all these things, we're not going to really address. It's more like just for this issue, he's got two problems. How does he balance that? That was more the question. And that's relatable. You go, okay, sure. We all have multiple responsibilities like family and work, something like that. Cool. Let's see that done on a metaphorical level where the guy has to both get his photos to J. Jonah Jameson so that he can get paid and pay for Aunt May's medical bills, but he also really can't ignore that Electro is about to kill 10 people at a bank, right? Like, but it works metaphorically. It wasn't like every issue he was like, boy, for the last year, I've been late for 23 dates with Mary Jane and she hates me. You know what I mean? I hope you know what I mean. It feels like a lot to me. It feels like an awful lot to put on this guy. Just like recapping, oh, he disappoints like everybody in his life. And then as Spider-Man, he gets tortured. You think I did a hatchet job on Defenders? I like Defenders. I'm surprised that's how it came across. But, I can't control how people interpret what I put out. All I can do is try to be more clear and more eloquent. I just today came across like a video. Actually, I think it was a 2-part video that seemed to be about, well, the one it said it was part 2 and it was an hour and a half. So I can only imagine that the first part was also an hour and a half. Just like I watched all of like 3 minutes of it and I bailed. It said it was reacting to my Marvel Method video. And it was just slamming me, saying that all it was a hit piece on Stan Lee. And I was like, all I was doing was like sort of talking about how artists had talked about it. Like it wasn't really me giving too much of my opinion on it, but they hated me for it. And I was just like, I'm out. I'm out. But that's okay. I don't expect everybody to agree with me all the time. And I am fully willing to admit that sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm just wrong. You know what I'll do sometime? I'm going to do an episode about like something that I have changed my opinion on. I used to absolutely love My Hero Academia, the manga. At a certain point, I realized kind of like late, it's almost over, so I'm going to finish it. But, oh my God, I don't like how it changed. I don't hate it, but I'm disappointed. The original My Hero Academia was kind of like the original New Mutants. It was a bunch of like, sort of high school kids or college age kids, and they were learning to use their powers to become superheroes. Cool. I loved the interpersonal dynamics. I loved that it was a blend of sort of like real life problems and school problems. And every once in a while, like a villain would attack and they'd sort of like have to step up their game because they were just students. And then it got to a point where all it is just all these supervillain teams like attacking a city and all the students just have to like be called because, there's not enough superheroes out there to stop them. And I'm just like, are we ever going to get back to the flirtatious relationship between the two main characters or the burgeoning friendship of the really nerdy student and like, the main character who's like in the middle? Are we ever going to get back to any of that? No, we're just going to deal with all this big superhero fights. And I was like, that wasn't what I was really interested in originally. So I'm going to do a follow-up episode because I did one episode talking about how much I liked it. But by the end, I feel like the writer-artist sort of lost the plot, lost what was cool about it, and got too obsessed with the action scenes. If that makes sense. Yeah. Well, it is now Comic Tropes After Dark, so I had to sort of dress the part. You know, it's after dark. It's cool. It's sexy now. It does sound like those are the standard stakes, but you can still balance it well. And I thought that the early, I'll even say like more than a half of it really balanced things well, while having like the character level up, but like also balancing it with like funny, interesting stuff with his friends and their interpersonal dramas. I liked all that. And then it just sort of got to be all fights. Oh, that's true. Boy, was that a show that like just like the first season, I'm going, okay, you know, I've seen some of this stuff before in comics, but heroes, okay, cool. I'm seeing a live action superhero show. It's treating it like seriously. I liked it. And then, boy, did they have no idea where they wanted to go after that. That show was a mess. That show was a mess. There's no dress code at Comic Tropes After Dark. That's the one thing I can tell you. Before I had this channel, not too long before I had the channel, I interviewed Seattle's real life superhero, Phoenix Jones, and followed him along on a crime patrol. It was a pretty dramatic night. And then he took me to this private club that he was a member of. And they were like, you can only wear black here. And I had on blue jeans. And they're like, you can't come in. And Phoenix is like, no, we have to go in and hang out here. I was like, we do? Okay. And so like his solution was, he's like, oh, I'm wearing black tights under my black jeans. You put on these black jeans. And I was like, really? And like the bouncer guy's like, yeah, that'd work. And so I changed my pants in front of the bouncer in the lobby of this private club and went into a club wearing somebody else's pants. So I've never been a huge fan of dress codes. I've never been a huge fan of dress codes. Anyway, I think that's everything I've got to talk about this week. Other stuff coming up, though, that I'd love to plug a little bit. Let's see. Oh, Jim and I are going to record another trash movie bonanza about Madam Web. I'm excited to force him to watch that thing. And then I'm currently editing the next Comic Tropes episode. I'm confident I'll have that up for everybody this weekend. It's a traditional sort of analysis of mostly a writer's techniques. Yeah, we'll do that. And then the week after that, I'm confident I'll also have an episode up about, talking to Peach Momoko. So I'm pretty excited about that. Aside from that, I would love to draw sometime soon. I don't know if I'll have time on this channel, but if you were here all night, Jim did mention I'll be on his and Sean Crystal's show, Ink Pulp. I'm gonna draw live with them. I think just 1 week from now. Maybe it's a week and a half, but anyway. So that's kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to it, folks. Oh, you're still here. Yeah, Madam Nightmare. I think it's a bad movie, but it's a so bad it's good. Like if you can laugh at it, it's ridiculous. Like the logic, like there's no logic to it. There's no logic to it. I think it's funny. You're ready to debate me on Defenders. I like Defenders. I don't remember exactly what I said in that old episode. Sorry. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I did like Defenders. I liked guys like, let's see, Steve Gerber and Steve, who was the other big Marvel guy in like the late 70s? Steve, I keep thinking of the Howard the Duck guy, but there was another Steve that I really liked, and all of a sudden I'm blanking. I'm terrible at names. All right. It's okay. I'm going to take off and have some dinner. I think you guys... Englehart, thank you. Thank you. I was thinking of Englehart. I like Englehart. I made an episode about Steve Englehart. I think he's an underrated, really good writer, especially like around the 70s. Like he did some really good stuff at Marvel and DC. That's really, really cool. Dude, I feel like there's something else I wanted to say, but it's not coming to me, so it can't be too important. I appreciate you all sticking around and watching this. I hope you all have good dinner. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about. Hold on. What's today? Oh, yes, we're just a couple days away from Thanksgiving. Is anybody doing anything fun for Thanksgiving? Chrissy and I are just going to have a dinner with her parents, but we've ordered, traditional turkey and sides. What are you guys doing? Is anybody traveling for Thanksgiving? Is anybody having a unique dinner or cooking it themselves? I'm curious. Like I like Thanksgiving. And if you don't have anything to say there, tell me a comic book artist, writer, or run that you're thankful for. I'm thankful for, you know what I'm thankful for? I'm thankful that through this show, I've made some new friends. I feel friendly with all of you. I know I haven't met you all in person, but I feel like guys like Jim and Derek Kirk Kim have become people that I really like talking to and admire, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for getting to meet some really great people through this show. And I'm very thankful for all of you being here. That sounds nice. Ooh, Cracker Barrel. Chrissy and I have done that several times, just like the two of us, maybe just having some chicken or something, and it can be nice too. Smoked turkey, please invite me over. Salmon and risotto. Dude, that's impressive. All right, thankful for Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. Thankful for the David Pervs Joe Fixit run. Very underrated. That's a good memory. Working and then going to my uncle's. Good. I hope you have a good time. That's nice to hear. Traveling to Phoenix, Arizona, or being in Phoenix. Oh, yeah, you are traveling there. First time back in 10 years. Have a good time. Hope the weather is cooperative. Thankful for the show. That's kind of you. Thankful for the Claremont Byrne X-Men run. It's a classic. No two ways about it. You're very kind. Thank you. The crack. I know. That's very impressive that Eric is about to hit 275 issues and that he wrote and drew them all himself, because there have been longer runs by guys like, Todd McFarlane's touched every issue of Spawn, but he didn't write and draw all of them. Same thing with like Dave Sim on Cerebus. He did that with Gerard. So. The Sculptor by Scott McCloud. Very nice. I am thankful for Hellboy as well. A big fan. Oh, yeah. That's really cool that you got to discover that. I agree. Timeless Art by Will Eisner. A master. A sincere master. Thankful for Carlos Pacheco. And Mike Waringo. We should have had them both longer. Having your sons over. Good. Oh, man, I'm a big fan of Mark Grunwald. Loved his run on Captain America. Loved it. Squadron Supreme. That's an underrated one by him. If you haven't read it, 12 issues. Really good. I might also do a Friendsgiving later on like December 1st, I think. Potluck with complete strangers. I hope you meet some interesting people. That's great. Bio Family Thanksgiving to support my newly out young trans cousin. Good. Okay. Hope it all goes very well. Thank you all for the nice compliments to me. I'll just keep going to things that aren't about me, because I feel like I don't want to be too egocentric. Thankful for manga and some of the indie comics. No question. Oh, man. Yeah. Strike Force Morituri. Badass. Sort of fizzles away at the very end, but a great premise with many great story arcs within it. Yep. Thankful for Alan Moore, J.H. Williams on Promethea. I haven't read that. I need to. I do need to. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'm glad I got to meet Stan too. Some people think that I am mean on Stan, and it's like it's more like I have a more informed take than I did when I was younger, and I'm like, he wasn't perfect, but I like Stan. I got to interview him. I think I have that on this channel. Yeah. Hanging with your boy. Good. You want me to call it a night? I can understand. My dog is thankful for turkey that falls on the floor. Oh, man. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry if that's ruined the show. I know I've got a persistent cough. I feel okay. It's just I can't shake it right now. All right, I'll wrap it up. Stanley, I would argue, is a lot better than Bob Kane. Just my take on things. Thanksgiving was over a month ago for us Canadians, but I'm thankful for Mobius and Darrow. Jeff Darrow. I'm thankful I got to meet him this year. Yeah. All right. I had a great time chatting with all of you. I hope you have a fantastic week. I'm really looking forward to talking to you next week. And I've got some good content coming your way. So hopefully I can alleviate a little of any stress or boredom in your lives and maybe introduce you to some new comics. That would be nice, or at least give you a new way of looking at a comic that you like. Thanks, everybody. Keep reading comics. Take care.